fellow lovers of the liminal and the weird, and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Today I would like to do a plot-spoiling deep read of The Farthest Shore by Ursula K. Le Guin. I've already done a review and spoken a little bit about it, so if you haven't watched that yet, go back and watch the review and then come back to this video. I do want to say that, of course, this is going to be a plot-spoiling deep read. If you haven't read this, I'm going to spoil every aspect of this book. So if you want to read it, this might not be the video to watch now. This video is mainly for people that have read the book before. But of course, if you don't mind spoilers and want to keep watching, then keep on. All right, let's jump into this. I didn't know what to expect for this book because A Wizard of Earthsea and The Tombs of Atuan were so different. Wizard of Earthsea, of course, is a young man coming to terms with his lust for power and ambition and his mortality and the mistakes that can be made by coveting those things. And then Tombs of Atuan is about identity and propaganda, and really truly about a young girl that's kind of raised in a cult almost. And that is her only worldview, and of her breaking out of that. And the end of Tombs of Atuan, her kind of attempting to comprehend, with great fear, to comprehend what freedom means. Beautifully done. Two very different books. So I didn't know what to expect when I was coming to this one. In fact, Tombs of Atuan, although Ged plays a major role in it, he really was a secondary character. Tombs of Atuan is Tanar's book. So in this book, we open with Ged now being the archmage of the school on the island of Roke. And we actually open with a young man named Aaron, who has come to deliver a message to the council on Roke about the fact that in the outlying lands of Earthsea, magic is disappearing. People are forgetting the words and the names of things and are unable to perform their usual wizardry. So of course, Ged shows up and receives Aaron's message. Aaron is the Prince of Enlad, and he is very taken with Ged and instantly tries to push himself into Ged's service. And Ged says, I may or may not accept that, but first we need to have this council. So they have a council with all the important people from the school there on the island of Roke. And it is decided that Ged is going to take Aaron and track down why magic is disappearing. And the only idea he has is to go, I think, south to try to figure this out. We are also introduced to the fact that there is a prophecy that says that the next king of all Earthsea will have to walk across the land of darkness and return. And Ged is very interested in a new king for Earthsea, and we kind of can tell pretty early in the book that he is thinking that Aaron might be the one for this, which was incredibly shocking for me, because in this way, this book kind of becomes the most traditional of the three in the fantasy genre, because it has echoes of Merlin and Arthur throughout it, which I found very interesting. So they head south on the boat Lookfar, of course, who was created in Earthsea and has been through all three of them. They head south on Lookfar and they go to Hort Town. And Hort Town, magic is disappearing and people are becoming addicted to this drug. And they meet a former wizard named Hare, who is now addicted to this drug, and he's using this drug to visit the world beyond life, the afterlife, kind of this strange world where the dead of the people of the archipelago go when they die. And this is a place you can also visit with magic, but of course, Hort I think he had his hands cut off or a hand cut off, so he can't use magic anymore, and is using this drug to make it to this place. And he claims that he knows that somebody pointed out to him in these drug-induced visits to the afterlife, that somebody pointed out to him a doorway, a small doorway that he can go through, which will eventually, of course, give him immortality. And he decides to show Ged where this doorway is. So they come back later at night, and Hare really wants Ged to take the drug. Ged says no, and follows him through magic into this underworld or afterlife. And while that's going on, people break into the room and try to rob them, and Aaron is abducted and sold into slavery and ends up on a slave ship, at which point Ged really shows off the awesomeness of his magic and just shows up and grabs Ged, releases all the chains of the slaves, or the people recently abducted for slavery, and allows them to choose what they want to do now that their chains are undone, and takes Ged. And Aaron, of course, loves Ged even more after this. He has this kind of awe of Ged. Ged tries to use magic very sparingly, which drives Aaron crazy, because Ged is very powerful and won't show that off. And it bugs Aaron to no end. So seeing him really use a ton of cool magic to come and get him off that slave boat really impresses Aaron. And it's here that the novel really begins to change. So there's a ton of wizards that are addicted to this idea of immortality, and there is somebody showing them the way. And even when Aaron was sitting there, his job was to bodyguard, literally, Ged's body, while Ged was using magic to go to the afterlife. And Aaron, in a kind of a meditative state, watching Ged's body, suddenly hears somebody calling to him. Ged brings up that he knew a wizard once that... Well, he tells, of course, Aaron the story of Earthsea, of his youth, of him tearing a rip between this world and the afterlife in order to see this dead famous elf woman and a shadow escaping. And he says there was another wizard that in his travels he came upon that was doing the same thing, but was doing it over and over again with no fear. So Ged forcefully took this other wizard, whose name was Cobb, into the afterlife and was like, this is what you're messing with. And it scared Cobb really bad, and Ged hadn't heard of him since. But we start to get the idea that maybe Cobb is the problem here. So they go to an island that's famous for silk and for dyes, but they were always dyed with this kind of magic color, and that has been lost because people are trying to gain that immortality. The name of this island was Lord Bannery, and there's a woman that he meets there that used to know how to dye silk, this special magic, and she doesn't know anymore, and she's kind of insane and obsessed with immortality, and he does her the honor of renaming her, which kind of erases her memory and gets her away from all this influence of this evil wizard that is promising people immortality. And her son, who is considered crazy, and he's probably because he's been associating with this wizard who's using dark magic in connection with the afterlife, decides to go with Ged and Aaron on the voyage to try to track this down because he wants to achieve immortality. This is the first decision that Ged makes that Aaron really hates. He doesn't want this person with them on Lookfar, and they fight about it. And I think that Cobb is starting to affect them. So they go out on the sea. They come to this island that's further, I think, west. And as they're coming up, suddenly they're attacked by people throwing spears from the shore. And one of these spears hits Ged, and all hope is lost. And the son of the woman that was looking for immortality that Ged renamed, jumps off the boat and drowns, and they get away from the shore, and Aaron is lost all of his belief and faith in Ged. He's decided that he's just this weak old man that can't do anything. He'll never show much magic. And this is, I think, again, the influence of Cobb on them. So he won't even go near Ged to help him, although he does give him drinks every once in a while. But they just float out to sea. Aaron is so despondent from this influence I think Cobb is putting on them, that he can't even row or try to save himself and Ged. And it seems all is lost. Quite a dark moment in this one. And then they are saved by raft people. And raft people are, just as the name suggests, people that live on rafts year-round. They only stop on land to repair their rafts and get more lumber and that kind of stuff once a year. And only specific people do it. So many of the people on these rafts have never set foot on actual land or ground. This part was very welcome after that dark moment before, and Ged and Aaron come together after they're no longer being influenced by Cobb. And it seems the raft people are outside of Cobb's influence. This part really reminded me of the new Avatar, which I was not a huge fan of. I'm not a huge fan of Avatar either way. But I watched the second one, and I feel like now the second Avatar might have been influenced. The sea tribe in the second Avatar might have been influenced by the raft people in the Farthest Shore. Mainly because the vibe's the same. It's suddenly this wonderful world where Aaron quickly starts to thrive, and he at first is silly to the raft people because he can't swim like they can and so on and so forth, but they become kind of like family to him. And then they do a huge celebration on the rafts where there's lots of chanting, and it's the shortest night of the year, or is it the shortest day? One of those. Suddenly Cobb's influence makes it to the raft people, and the chanters forget the songs, which is terrifying. And then what looks like a giant hawk appears in the sky, and Ged stands up and shouts in the dragon tongue that he is Ged, and if anybody is looking for him, that he is there. And down flies a dragon. And this is the dragon Orm Embar. And he flies down and speaks with Ged and asks for Ged's help, which is unheard of. Dragons don't ask mortals for help. But Orm Embar does come down and talks of this creature, this wizard, that no matter how many times the dragons kill him, he comes back again and again, and he's unnatural and terrifying to these dragons. So then Ged knows where he has to go, because he's just going to follow Orm Embar to where he needs to go, and that is the island of Celador. I don't know exactly when the essay came out, but Tolkien wrote an essay and said that cellar and door sound incredible when put together in the English language, and I think that is the reason Celador is why she called this island Celador. I don't have 100% proof that that's true, but I believe that they are connected. So they go to the island of Celador and they meet dragons, and one of the things that Aaron said early at the beginning of their journey is that he's always wanted to meet dragons, and Ged talks about meeting dragons as he did in Earthsea. So they meet dragons, and of course this is a life-fulfilling moment for Aaron. The dragons, however, can no longer talk. They have to be very careful making it through these southern islands so that they don't get killed by the dragons. But eventually Orm Embar comes back to them, the dragon, as they make it to Celador, and leads them to where they need to go. And this is when the novel gets the most liminal and weird, which I really enjoyed. And it was very similar to the end of Earthsea. In my opinion, these two books really mirror each other. It's the same journey that Ged took as a youth, but now he's taking as an old man with a youth with him. But they make it to this shore that's slowly coming down to a point, the end of all the islands, the end of the earth, really. And on it is a cabin made out of dragon bones. And here they finally confront Cobb. So they start to fight Cobb, and of course Cobb is the wizard that Ged had many, many years before shown the afterlife in order to stop him from using this dark magic. But actually what happened is, although Cobb was afraid, he became obsessed with, specifically because he was afraid, because Ged scared him so much, he was so afraid of death that he started looking for ways around it, for immortality. And they fight, and it looks like Cobb is going to win, but Orm Imbar smashes him, basically kills him, but also dies in the battle. But Orm Embar saves them from Cobb by killing Cobb, and Cobb becomes this little tiny shadow creature and starts crawling away. And they follow him into the afterlife. They go into a new dimension. And this dimension is separated. You start to go into it, and there's a wall. And it's a small stone wall that you can just step over. But when you step over it, you're really entering the land of the dead. And the land of the dead, in this case, seems to me to be very Greek. If you look at Hades, very early descriptions of Hades in Greek mythology, the souls wander around lost, confused. They don't really remember who they were. And that's similar to this afterlife in this novel. And she gives one very strong description of a mother who is with her child, and they probably died together, but they just kind of wander around ignoring each other because there's no love in this afterlife at all. There's just wandering. And they follow Cobb to the foothills of this mountain called the Mountains of Pain, where he has ripped a gash between the worlds. And that's why the magic was leaving Earthsea, was because this gash was sucking all the magic and all the good out of the world of Earthsea. And Ged has to close this, and he eventually does, but in the process he loses all of his magical power. He becomes no longer a wizard because he spends every bit of magical power that he has to close this gash. Unfortunately, he passes out and is unable to leave the world of the dead, and Aaron takes him over the Mountains of Pain and back to the beach where they initially left the Earthsea dimension, and they return there. Eventually, they meet Aaron meets another dragon who takes both him and Ged back to the main island, I think, of Roke, and flies him to Roke, drops off Aaron, who is going, now that he has fulfilled the prophecy and traveled across the land of darkness and returned, is going to become king of all of Earthsea. And Ursula K. Le Guin ends it twice. She gives two endings, one where Ged sails off into the sea and is never seen again, and the other where he returns to his homeland of Gaunt and lives in the mountains like his master did before him. And we learn, apparently later in Tahanu, that this is the ending that Ursula K. Le Guin accepted as the real one later in her writings. It is an incredible end. It ends with hope, and it ends with promise. It ends with balance, which is so important for these novels. It is, to me, the least of the three, which is not entirely negative because it's an incredible book, and I highly recommend reading it. The plot line that I just gave was very bare bones. There is so much incredible writing in this book, but I feel like, and this is interesting because Earthsea The first half is always a little hard for me. I DNF'd it at one point, trying to read the first half of the first book, A Wizard of Earthsea. This book starts better than A Wizard of Earthsea all the way around. But the ending, the latter half of Earthsea, is so good. And I feel like this book was retreading that same concept. Now, the original Wizard of Earthsea had more to do with identity, and this one had more to do with kind of the responsibility of power. And I think that's one of the main themes in this book, is the responsibility of power. You have Ged, who is the Archmage, the most important wizard in all of Earthsea, and you have Aaron, who is about to take responsibility for all of Earthsea by becoming king. So the concept of taking responsibility is very important throughout this novel. Aaron is wrestling with the idea of having to take responsibility, and Ged is wrestling with the idea of being done with it. He just wants to be a hermit now. He's tired of all this stuff, and he does get to be a hermit at the end. But the concept of going to this magical end of the ocean and confronting a shadow creature and going into a kind of another dimension to do so, both books end similarly in that sense. And I feel like Earthsea, for me, was a little better. I'm sorry, A Wizard of Earthsea, the first one, was a little better than The Farthest Shore. Although the cabin made out of dragon bones at the end of the world was incredible in this one as well. So we're talking very little. They're very close, these two. And of course, my favorite is the one that least fits in the trilogy, in my opinion, and that is The Tombs of Atuan, which I absolutely loved. It was dark, it was about identity, and I thought it was incredible. Is this a worthwhile series? Absolutely. If I had to put this ranked in my favorite fantasy series of all time, this would be 2. The only one before it would be Mary Stewart's Merlin trilogy, just because the nostalgia I have with that. I love it so much. This can't beat that, but it is dang close. This was incredible. I look forward to reading the next trilogy, Tahanu and The Other Shore, and all of that later. But for now, I'm going to be done with this for a little while so the channel can move on to other stuff. But yes, I do highly recommend these. I think you all will very much enjoy them. I think that is everything I have to say. If you watched this to the end, thank you so much. If you liked it, please click like. And if you like this kind of content, please click subscribe, because we'll be making a lot more of it. Thank you very much for watching.